Seeing others as one. And Andy, our practitioner this morning, did a wonderful meditation. Of course, that is divinely in alignment. How do you know when you are being intuitively guided by spirit? How do you know? Something in your gut? Excellent. How do you know? Yeah? It's like something's moving you? Beautiful. There is no resistance, leaning in. Fulfilled. That you know you're there. You're trusting the outcome. Say that one more time. I come from my know that I know. Almost I am that I am. Beautiful. Synchronicity that happens. There's a harmony. Surprises. Really? Okay. Because the serendipity shows up and you go, oh, wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's a dance, huh? Beautiful. Now, do you realize that none of that can happen if you're not aware of it? And so a lot of people, no judgment, live their lives without that awareness. How many of you read the book, The Celestine Prophecy? Okay, not surprised. Most of the people in the room. And indeed, based on all the things that you've just said, you've experienced when spirit is intuitively guiding you. Because you have a relationship with that awareness. That's what spiritual practice is about. Becoming aware of that relationship and that life. Now, for me, my first response was, I know I'm intuitively guided when serendipitously different things come together like pieces of a puzzle. Yeah. And I might be living in time and space on Earth, and that feels like it's linear, but things happen and then all of a sudden it just comes together as I've been living my life, right? Like, oh, that connects to that, that connects to that. And so it is today as I share my puzzle pieces. So many of you were here for Reverend Eileen when she delivered the lesson on September 29th called Healing Our Planet. I'm sure you remember that. And I'm sure you remember that because it stuck with me, and I know a lot of people said, yes, that was a very heavy message. Because we talked about what's happening to the planet and the human impact and climate change, and based on what we're experiencing even today. And of course, that stuck with me as we talked about species going extinct and plastic filling the ocean and burning too many fossil fuels, etc. And you know, we call Mother Earth, why do we call it Mother Earth? Because it's life-giving. It's the nurturing of the different aspects of nature, the ecosystem working together. And Reverend Eileen's lesson, hit me hard. In other words, it wouldn't go away. So I knew there was something in me like, okay, what am I to say, to do, to know, to be? And it's not that I hadn't heard the issues before, right? But she delivered a message that was personally right here in the room amongst us. It was more palpable. And I kept asking myself, okay, based on science of mind, our philosophy here, where do I go from here? And I know I need to sit with it and not just try to fix it. So I kept asking the question over and over. And what I found out is, psychologists will say when things get too big, do you know what we do? When we're overwhelmed? Shut it out, shut it down. Do you feel like that regarding climate change? And I think that's sort of what I felt from Reverend Eileen's, like, oh, wow, I know my God is big. And this is big. What do I do with that? How do I digest that? We eat an apple one piece at a time. We don't swallow the whole apple. How, where, what? Well, that is puzzle piece number 1. Puzzle piece number 2 was later on that same day. Our center has been sponsoring booths, and we sponsored at the KZFR Touch of Chico a booth where Crystal had set up our booth so nicely as she does, and she had the Earth flag. Yeah. And we've usually had that at our booths, but of course it stood out to me that day. And I was just taking in, that was in our booth, and there was music and people getting massage and people who are focused on healing and lots of people coming up. And I realized, this flag is a draw. And it's a draw because it naturally symbolizes our home. It doesn't have to be politicized. It doesn't have to have labels on it. This is our home. And I realize that those that are alert and aware are conscious and recognizing the earth within their heart are drawn to that. It symbolizes the unity that we are. And based on our science of mind principles, and frankly, pretty much any faith, the answer comes, we must love Mother Earth. Now that sounds simple, but if we say we love ice cream and then I love you, there's different depths of love. And perhaps what we have not been focused on, which each of us can always go to a layer deeper, is loving our Mother Earth, which is the universal message, not any particular slant of a message. And love overcomes the fear and the overwhelming that came to me when I was thinking about the big picture. Oh yes, I know I am love, I am of love, and I know I can give love, and I can surround the earth with love, and I can pay more attention in how I daily love the earth. Is that a different emphasis than maybe typically we walk around with? So I came back and hung the earth flag in the sanctuary. I want to keep it here. True. The key thing is that as we are here doing our spiritual practice together, where 2 or more are gathered in His name, in the name of the Christ consciousness, our intention as a community can focus as we walk in on, I love my home. I love Mother Earth. That's puzzle piece number 2. I want you to look at that earth flag, and I want you to tell me, I want you to point yourself out to me in that. Do you see yourself in there? Yeah. You know that ball spins 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. Any of you have motion sickness? So we are taught when we are younger to look around the room and say we are other. You are different because, you're picking what you're doing and you're doing something different than I am. So it's the other. And yet, when you look at the earth, you don't see that other. You see that we all live on that one planet, and we depend on all the ecosystems that work together for the greater good of life. Now, in case you think, well, yeah, Kathy, that's the God picture. That's the macro level. What about the micro? Okay, point to me the cell in your body that is responsible for your health. First of all, your finger's too big to point at a cell. Second of all, your body understands that you're one body, even though there are different cells. The body has the wisdom to know that while all the cells are not alike, they work together to offer the intelligence to work together to make your body whole and well. The intelligence of a system, of a community, of a group that honors and respects the differences, but understands completely the oneness. Now, as religious scientists, as people practicing the science of mind, we need to keep reminding ourselves, because again, we were taught subconsciously that we are other. No, we are one. Alan Watts says, so then the relationship of self to other is the complete realization that loving yourself is impossible without loving everything defined as other than yourself. That other opinion, that other personality that pushes your buttons, that other color, that other race, that other identity, it's one. The rainbow cannot be the rainbow without all the colors. Now, of course, again, today, a lot of us have heard about the quantum physics and that we understand at the subatomic level, physical and non-physical, it all blends. So I may see that you may look as just one body, so we may see it as separate, but the truth on an atomic level, it's mostly space and it all intermingles. The breath we breathe out is taken in by the trees. They breathe out the oxygen that we need. So you are quite literally everything and everyone. And you have the freedom to choose to see yourself in everything or not. So it's seeing other people as your broader self, the bigger self, higher self, the essence of spirit expressing. And when you can, and the quote here says adopt, but I would rather use the word embody. When you can embody the viewpoint that there is nothing that exists that is not a part of you, that there is no one who exists who is not a part of you, that any judgment you make is really self-judgment, and any criticism you level is self-criticism. You will extend to yourself an unconditional love that will be the light of the world. When you can embody that consistently. So you can look at the earth. You can look at your body. Either way, you can see that it lives in harmony. And harmony in music does not mean playing the same note. It means playing notes that are beautiful together, but they're different notes. So it is with us. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, says, to love God and to love your neighbor as ourselves means to see God in everything and include everyone in the one divine unity. On this admission of the Master hangs the meaning of all divine law, spiritual prophecy, and true revelation. Yes, love Mother Earth. Another piece of puzzle. In May, my mom turned 79. You wouldn't know that if you met her. Like me, a ball of energy. Doesn't look 79. And her parents came from Switzerland, and she never really got to meet her relatives till she was an older adult. So she's been to Switzerland a few times, but she had said out loud quite a few times, I enjoy going back and being with my relatives, but I'd really like to see more of the United States before I go. And my dad is a little bit of a couch potato, so for her birthday and Mother's Day, I said, Mom, I'm taking you on a trip. Which trip on your bucket list would you like to go on? So I just got back from a trip to Arches National Park, Canyonlands, Mesa Verde National Park with the cave dwellings, and finally, Monument Valley, also known as the Navajo Tribal Public Lands. Now, was it coincidence that I went on this magnificent trip? While we're talking about Mother Earth and loving the earth. So as I traversed and hiked and drove around those magnificent views, put it on your bucket list if you can do that, I kept saying, I love you. I love you. For those of you who are on my Facebook, you got to see the pictures. Happy to share them with those that aren't Facebook. But you just can't get enough. And I kept synergizing with the love that I was seeing and the love that I wanted to give back. Yes, I was saying I love you to the rocks. Formed 3 million years ago. Wow. Saying I love you to the softest and silkiest sand I've ever felt, to the desert plants. And I thought it was really appropriate that I was with my mother and together loving the earth. My mom and I probably haven't spent that much alone time together for decades, so it was just a very special trip. Are you all familiar with the book called E Squared? So it gives people 9 experiments to do, and you've probably heard this, seen this, and you can find it on the internet, where when you speak lovingly to a plant with kindness, it will grow more. You can also put rice into 2 jars and speak the ugly stuff to this one and the kind stuff to this one and demonstrate how your words have power, a principle of the science of mind. So we know our words have power and that thoughts are things. Puzzle piece number 3. Next puzzle piece. I decided, since I was doing a lot of the driving, to hire a tour guide to travel through the 17 miles of Monument Valley. They don't recommend taking a rental car. Since I was doing lots of driving, it's like, let's let somebody else drive. Of course, we connected with others that were on the tour. And I hired Navajo Spirit Tours. Yeah, you might not have to figure out why I chose that one, right? Besides TripAdvisor. And, of course, I got to meet the tour guide, who was a Navajo American Indian named Don, and magnetism. In a very short period of time, I felt very connected to him. He, you know how we do a handshake and we grab people's hands? Well, he went to each one of us and he showed us how the Native Americans shake hands. And they basically make sure that the 4 fingers touch. Because this is me. This is my mom, this is my dad, and these are my maternal grandparents. And when you and I meet, you're meeting the family. Just gave me chills. That was just one example. Of course, we know the Native Americans were very connected to the earth. And I thought, wow. Spirit, you are just so clearly speaking to me based on, I was asking, what do I do with Reverend Eileen's message? And did you know that a kernel of corn can be planted 70 years later and it'll still grow? Hundreds of more kernels? And he shared how his particular, the Navajos actually grew corn in circles. Wow, that's fascinating. I mean, the connection was just unbelievable. And I'm not a city girl, meaning my parents were raised on dairies, and I was always with my grandparents there. My dad sold farm equipment up and down the valley, farm equipment. So it's not like I'm a city girl. but the connection just went so deep. I'm sort of challenging you. How can you love the earth? Will it make a difference? This kind of awareness, recognition, and your power of your word to say, I love you, Mother Earth. Puzzle piece number 4. I work at the university, and a professor in geography, Dr. Mark Stamen, offered a session for the Humanities Center called The Narrative of Climate Change. The narrative of climate change. And he started out by basically saying, the number 2 doesn't mean anything to you, per se. But if you're hungry, 2 apples means a lot to you. And therefore, science can be about a bunch of numbers and theories that don't really draw our heart and passion and engage us. And so storytelling is very important. And, I've been saying to myself, okay, of course I've believed the scientists. And of course I can understand when they speak at a high level what they're talking about. But I can't speak science to you. So if I want to engage in a discussion with each other about loving Mother Earth, how do I do that? Well, he had an answer. He basically said we have to create our own local version of a story about climate change. A video of a polar bear jumping from one piece of floating ice to another may be sad, but it doesn't directly affect my life here in Chico, right? So I care. What do I do about that? Again, we go back to that's too big, it's overwhelming, I don't know what to do about that. Well, there is a state of California website called caladapt.org. Now, of course, we don't need to put on our zip code because, yes, we have had the campfire and we are all personally experiencing the effects very closely here, as, of course, our neighbors are now also. But the idea is you can put in your zip code and it will tell you not only about, how it sees fire in the future, but water, floods, the chaotic weather, etc. And he has his students going to that website, putting in numbers, looking at the graphs, and it's all very visual, so that's also very nice. And just to give you an example, let me say the students have to create a story of living in Chico in 2050. Create a story, make it personal, use your thoughts and your words to describe how you will live in that environment. Chico will go from the current average of 4 days per year with the heat of 104 or hotter in the year 2050 to 45 days per year of 104 or hotter if we don't change course. So you get to see that in the graph, and the students get to create a story about that. Now, I am talking students, so they're having fun creating events that happen at night, because that's when people come out to connect. They create walls where they funnel the water and do things with that water for other uses. And again, they get very creative. Now, in Science of Mind, we talk about envisioning, using your mind, the power of your mind to imagine, to know your greater truth. Are you starting to know where I'm going here? So, I want to do a couple things here at the center. But I really need to know if your heart is in it. Because if you're not really that passionate or engaged, it won't have the same effect. So I also need you to be authentic, meaning don't say, yeah, I'm in it, and then not really in it. I want you to be true to your word, and you may need to have Spirit guide you based on all the puzzle pieces that I've just described, right? But the idea is, yes, let's create a wall, maybe it's, of poster paper, I don't know. I'm going to ask creative people to help me out with this, where we create some short stories of how we are going to love Mother Earth in Chico right now and to the year 2050. I can see it where it says, I love Mother Earth by fill in the blank. Now, just making this come together in our community brings it personal to us, lifts the opportunity for us to have conversation and to highlight, to share, to synergize the thoughts and the actions you are taking. Because you may be taking action, but do I see that? Do I know that? Do I hear that? So this will allow us to create a community awareness. Now, let me give you an example. So then I'm at the Canyonlands, and of course I had to buy the portable wooden silverware that I would keep in my backpack in order to avoid the plastic utensils. And I know people talk about, okay, I'm not using plastic water bottles. What else can I do? Well, let's at least have a conversation, shall we? What do you think? Okay. See if I can get that to be a little stronger over time. The second thing people need to contemplate, I know I did, digest. The second thing that I want to do is the Chico Area Interfaith Council, which has leaders from all the faiths in Chico, is drafting a declaration, along with many other faiths who have already done this, on what the community is willing to declare and to stand for on climate change. And they've already drafted a statement, and they sent out a lot of information, and I have 19 pages worth. Now, what are the 19 pages? Well, different faiths have written things at different times, and so they're dated with what that faith, which is actually very fun, to read what different faiths are saying about their commitment and what they declare based on their philosophy. And it says, explicit denial of climate change is almost non-existent among the world's religions. So, and why? Because most religions respect what is sacred. And some examples, and I'm just going to read a few things here. Therefore, be it resolved that the Chico Area Interfaith Council encourages local congregations to educate themselves, their communities, and their locally and nationally elected officials on the consequences of climate change. And I would add, and how each person is making a difference based on what we contribute together. Therefore, be it resolved that the Chico Area Interfaith Council encourages all political leaders to quickly adopt legislation. And of course, we get to pick and change, but what I'd like to do is our community to create our version of that and join the Chico Area Interfaith Council. So for those of you who feel a calling to use your words to declare how we as the Center for Spiritual Living Chico know the truth about the earth, know that it is our intention, action, and purpose to love Mother Earth, how would we like to declare that for us and for our community? So I'm going to ask, and I'll say this broadly, and then we'll put it in the e-blast. I'm calling on people who would be interested in helping sculpt something that we can stand by community-wise. In summary, I know that I'm divinely guided when all the puzzle pieces come together and build momentum in calling me and my community to take action. Spirit is very much alive for me when all these things come together, and it isn't only the topic in my life, but it's the spiritual practice that aligns all of us in the divine love and with the higher intelligence, and it's at the core of each of us to come together, which can help heal the earth and really heal our consciousness, which then will be reflected in Mother Earth. Seeing others as one, seeing others as us. Now, on your chair, you all have, thank you, Dr. Carolyn, a reminder of this great invocation, which is a prayer that was given to Alice Bailey, meaning, I can lightly use the word channeled, very spiritually connected. She did this after the World War in April 1945. And as a closing to this lesson, I'd like us all to read together. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May the Christ consciousness return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where darkness dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Namaste.